Chapter 18. Fueled by Sin. The knife slowly moves across the child's throat. Enkidu screams, lunging forward at the atrocity, but is held back by the masses of the priesthood. Wide-eyed and confused, the child suddenly becomes dizzy. He feels cold, yet also feels warmth at the same time. As the first drops of innocent blood touch the serpent's tongue, he howls with delight. More blood continues to flow, and he gorges himself on it. The child's blood is imbued with his very life essence, and is the most empowering feeling the serpent has ever experienced. "Damn you!" Nemeth screams, raising his sword into the air. Dakan turns in time to see the mercenary bring his weapon down upon the neck of another who is in pursuit of Enkidu. "You disloyal vermin!" Dakan screams. "You shall die an even worse death than Enkidu." "You slew an innocent child," Nemeth shouts, cutting down another temple guard. "I can never forgive that." "To hell with your forgiveness," Dakan shouts. "I care only for the blessings of Nyarlathotep." "To hell with that worm," Nemeth replies, slashing through the throat of another guard, before cutting diagonally across the chest of yet another. Completely enraged, Dakan anoints himself with the blood of the sacrifices, and prays for Nyarlathotep to come forth and devour his enemies. "Mighty God of Dwarka, do not allow the insults to your honor go unpunished. Take these vile blasphemers into your jaws as punishment." Haida slips a knife into her hand and plunges it deep into the neck of the priest holding her. As the man falls and sprays dark arterial blood everywhere, she tosses her blade to Enkidu before 3 more priests subdue her. Catching the knife, the warrior throws his head back into the nose of the priest behind him and pivots, slashing Haida's weapon across the throat of another. A priest grabs at him from behind, but Enkidu hurls him over his shoulder with his hip and twists his arm while kicking the man's armpit to dislocate the appendage. He turns, kneeing another priest in the chest and sending him back into the approaching crowd of more devout. A group of guards rush Enkidu, but Nemeth hurls Tiavan into the back of the center man. "Here," Nemeth says, decapitating a temple priest. "I think this belongs to you." Enkidu withdraws his angelic blade from the back of the guard and pivots, cutting the other 2 that approach with a single powerful swing. "I knew that you were a man of integrity." Nemeth pivots, cutting down 2 more temple guards. "If Dakan had not taken things this far, I would have allowed him to kill you." Enkidu grins, slicing Tiavan down through the skull of a priest. "I had more faith in your character than you did, it would seem." Dropping to the floor, Haida scrambles between the legs of one of the priests and kicks the back of his knees, sending his face smashing against a column before he tumbles down the nearby steps and hits his head several more times. A sickening snap is heard, and the man falls to the ground with a broken neck. Stunned by the horrific sight, the other 2 priests are caught unawares by Haida before she's able to pick up a sword off the floor and plunge it straight through the heart of one of them. The 3rd priest turns in surprise, but he is slashed across the face by Haida with a scream of rage. 2 more priests rush Enkidu, but he drives his fist through the face of the first and turns, elbowing the other in the throat. Not trained for combat, the priesthood are easily killed by Enkidu, and without a hostage to keep him at bay, no one stands between him and the high priest of Nyarlathotep. "You dare defile this holiest of places," Dakan shouts, shaking the lifeless body of the child at Enkidu. Unmatched rage fills the warrior, and he screams in fury before running at the priest. Without any defenses, the man throws the child at Enkidu and tries to make a run for the temple's exit. Enkidu catches the body and kneels, slowly setting it down on the floor with sadness. "I am sorry that I could not save you from this horrible fate, young one." The last drops of blood fall from the boy's throat and splash onto the ground. A violent rumbling tremor resonates throughout the temple and the whole of the city. Large chunks of stone begin to loosen and collapse from the ceiling, burying a great many of the priests and guards of Dwarka. The quaking intensifies until the ground splits open into several deep chasms that snake through the region. Hundreds of Dwarka citizens fall into the dark abyss, their screams vanishing before they ever reach the bottom. Entire buildings are consumed by the splitting earth. Black smoke rises from the darkness, followed by the overwhelming stench of sulfur. Nyarlathotep looks around in confusion as large stones continue to fall down into his pit, blocking several of his tunnels. He tastes the sulfur with his tongue and grimaces, recognizing the smell as something very old and of the purest evil. The spirits of the dead rise up from the opened earth and fly around the city uttering screams of tortures endured by their gruesome deaths. Every life taken in tribute to the serpent now haunts the city that gave them over to die. "What madness is this?" Namath whispers, spirits howling all around him. Dwarka guards fall to their hands and knees in torment, recognizing many of the spirits as those they personally slew in service of the serpent. "We have to escape," Haida says, taking Enkidu's hand. "The entire temple is collapsing around us." "Not just the temple," Enkidu says, pointing out across the city through a portion of broken wall. "All of Dwarka is suffering this same punishment." "This dark magic?" Namath asks. No one can answer, but they all know they must flee before worse things begin to appear. The tortured spirits haunt the city, shrieking with inhuman voices that drive the living to terror. More buildings are swallowed by the spreading fissures, and citizens continue to disappear into the darkness, never to be found. At the docks, boats are launched before they are full of passengers, attempting to flee the hell unleashed upon the city. Lightning strikes each vessel, blasting them to nothing more than smoldering debris. Enkidu and Haida move for the exit, stumbling as the entire world seems to be quaking. Several guards block their path with trembling sword arms. "Stand aside," Enkidu says. "Is killing us truly more important to you than your own lives?" "You have brought God's wrath down upon us," one of the guards shouts. "Your interference has caused him to punish us." "Nyarlathotep is not causing this," Enkidu shouts, pointing to the serpent as it looks around in confusion. "The worm is in as much dismay as we are. The sin of Dwarka has moved the one true God to anger. I tried to save this city, but she was far too stubborn and set in her immoral ways. For the sins of Diamanaga, worshipping the serpent, and murdering people as human sacrifices, this city has been damned." "What you say cannot be true," the guard says, uncertain. "The God of Dwarka has always blessed us for our sacrifices and prayers." "That vile worm has no power to bless or to curse. Nyarlathotep is a liar and a bloodthirsty monster. You offered your bodies to the serpent and defiled them. You gave your children over to it as sacrifices. The end of this city is due to her own people." "No," the guard shakes his head, refusing to let go of years of religious doctrine. "You must die for us to save Dwarka." Enkidu sighs, saddened that even now followers of the serpent refuse to give up on their beliefs. He glances at his hands, reminded that he still holds Haida's knife. "Here," Enkidu says, returning to Haida her weapon. "You still have need to defend yourself. These fools refuse to admit their wickedness, even when faced with their ultimate judgment." They're not going to allow us to leave without a fight. The spears of the guards have a much longer range and have him at a severe disadvantage. Tivon is a mid-range weapon, used more for stopping power than for attacking at a distance. To get past the spears, Enkidu will need to fight smart. The first guard lunges, spurring his fellows to action. Enkidu sidesteps the first spear, slapping the staff down and pivoting with a roundhouse kick to the attacker's face. The second guard jabs with his spear, cutting Enkidu's palm as he attempts to block. "The walls!" Haida shouts, pointing back towards the altar of Nyarlathotep. "They are collapsing!" From below them, coils of black death rise in furious anger. "How dare you defile this holy ground?" Nyarlathotep hisses. Nemeth stumbles, nearly taking a slash to the abdomen due to his gaffe. "The hell is that thing? Are you telling me the god of Dwarka is real?" "That is no god," Enkidu says. "That is nothing but an overgrown worm, bloated on false worship." "Enkidu Hyalura," Nyarlathotep hisses. "I know you well. You have caused great harm to my power over this region. Because of your meddling, it shall take me centuries to regain my influence over such masses." "He is not your only foe, serpent," Nemeth shouts, leaping at Nyarlathotep with a vertical slash. "You shall learn my name as well. Nemeth Ungart." The impact of steel and black scales vibrates through the man's hands and causes him tremendous pain. Nemeth is sent sprawling backwards. "I care not for your name, weakling. You shall be little more than a snack to me." Nemeth grins, back on his feet. "Then I must make you learn my name." Nemeth charges, attempting to gouge the serpent's eyes. The agile creature evades and rears back to strike. Enkidu attacks from the side, hacking into Nyarlathotep's bulk nearly an inch. The beast howls in pain, thrashing wildly and knocking both men aside with its mass. "Do not attempt to steal my glory, Enkidu," Nemeth coughs, crawling back to his feet. "You are barely alive. Allow me to fight this battle." "Nemeth, the serpent is far too strong for either of us to take lightly. Even if I were at full health, I do not believe I could best the creature alone. We must work together, or we will both perish." Enkidu and Nemeth charged Nyarlathotep using a coordination honed during their battles together years ago. The men break off upon reaching the serpent, darting in different directions so that the beast is unable to track them simultaneously. Nyarlathotep turns its head, snapping at the movement of the warriors, but they leap around the temple, evading the deadly strikes. Enkidu brings Tivon down across the serpent's nape, but the beast manages to twist just enough to maneuver Enkidu into biting range. Nemeth rushes, driving his own blade to the hilt between several rib scales on the creature's exposed belly. A deafening screech fills the air, and Enkidu is able to use Nyarlathotep's snout as a springboard and backflip off the creature, slashing downward as he falls. Blood sprays outward from the cut, and Nyarlathotep thrashes, knocking both men with its massive coils. Nemeth stares at his sword, still lodged in the black creature. For God, he seems killable. I was worried for nothing. "I told you before, that worm is no god," Enkidu says, glaring at Nyarlathotep. "Damned monkeys," Nyarlathotep bellows. "I will devour you all." With a burst of incredible speed, the serpent strikes, and neither men are able to dodge with any time to spare. Nyarlathotep twists, striking again and again at Enkidu, who parries with his sword as he jumps backward continuously. Nemeth picks up a fallen guard's weapon and runs after them. The serpent turns just as Nemeth leaps with an overhead slash, putting its jaws closed over the brave warrior. "Nemeth!" Enkidu screams. Nemeth falls back, the entire right side of his body missing. Blood sprays outwards in all directions and drips steadily from the serpent's jaws. "He is not worth eating," Nyarlathotep mocks, spitting the bloody pieces of the slain warrior to the floor. "It is you who I truly hate, Enkidu. I will enjoy the feeling of your body slowly disintegrating within my stomach acids." "Damn you!" Enkidu cries out, hatred, sorrow filling his mind. Steam-like energy rises from the man's form, and the wounds that should have already killed him actually begin to cauterize from the intense heat being generated from his body. "Your terror ends now, worm." The temple again shakes violently, more large stones becoming dislodged and falling. The line of guards are broken by the stone raining down upon them and tearing through the floor to expose the sacrificial pit. Enkidu runs for the altar, tackling two guards into each other and rolling across the floor until he reaches Dakin. Makeda moves to defend the head priest, but Nyarlathotep snaps down to devour the foreigner, and instead takes hold of his servant. Makeda screams, bitten in half. Enkidu quickly turns, cutting through the serpent's midsection and opening the creature up. Blood slashes to the floor, and it's clear that the wound is serious, even to one such as Nyarlathotep. "This cannot be happening!" Nyarlathotep howls in grief, crashing his bulk against the ceiling and bringing down more of the temple upon them. Enkidu and Haida make another run for the exit, but the serpent's great tail slams down to prevent them from running any further. "All your fault!" Nyarlathotep screams. "You have ruined my city!" "You brought this upon yourself by masquerading as a god. It is not me whom you should fear," Enkidu challenges. "Fear? I do not fear you, human. I hate you. You mock me and challenge my authority over Dwarka. I cannot tolerate your blasphemy any longer." Nyarlathotep strikes, jaw snapping at Enkidu with fury. The warrior dives to the side narrowly, dodging the bite. Winding around, the serpent strikes again and again. Enkidu pushes Haida out of the way, slashing Tiavan as the serpent attacks once more. Diamond clashes against Fang, and the serpent howls in pain, as several of its teeth are shattered. "Damn you!" Nyarlathotep screams, thrashing wildly. Followers are crushed beneath the falling rubble, and flattened by the serpent's whipping coils. The priest Marbidi Apla is struck by Nyarlathotep's tail and splattered against a stone pillar, killing him instantly. Enkidu pulls Haida by the arm and away from the walls of the temple as they begin to bleed. A sea of crimson flows from the walls, which scream out in pain. Faces fade in and out of view within the blood, victims of horrific ritual sacrifices. Phantom bones appear on the floor, stacking up nearly to the ceiling. Dakin tries to flee, tripping over the mountainous remains. "This cannot be real. These must be illusions." "The lives you and your priesthood have stolen are now finally coming back to repay you," Enkidu growls. "Did you think that their voices would stay silent forever?" Several members of the city guard and the priest Apinu suddenly burst into flames, reduced to ash in seconds. Throughout the city, hundreds of citizens spontaneously combust, just as violently. Specters howl and wail, flying through the air as little more than faint outlines of human forms. Stronger spirits, twisted by years of hatred and resent, begin to manifest. A spirit can become a predatory creature called a revenant, if its will to live again is strong enough, driving it to devour other spirits and mutate, to gain features of the creatures it consumes. This transformation is fueled by an insatiable hunger for power and existence, but may also come at the cost of losing its former identity and humanity. When a spirit is driven by an overwhelming desire to regain physical form and existence, it may resort to devouring other spirits to sustain itself and grow stronger. The spirit initially seeks out weaker spirits, or those that are vulnerable, drawn to their energy like a ravenous predator. It pounces upon its prey, using its inherent abilities to drain the life force of the other spirits, absorbing their energy and essence. With each successful feeding, the spirit gains strength and vitality, which allows it to mutate and transform. As the creature continues to consume other spirits, it begins to assimilate features and characteristics of the creatures it devours. This process is driven by its hunger for power and its relentless pursuit of physical form. It may develop traits such as sharp teeth, claws, or sensory enhancements to aid it in its predatory pursuits. Its form may shift and mutate, incorporating aspects of the creatures it consumes, creating a unique and formidable hybrid creature. The predatory spirit becomes more cunning and adaptive over time, learning from its experiences and honing its hunting skills. Its insatiable hunger drives it to seek out increasingly powerful spirits, absorbing their energy and abilities to further augment its own power. Its mutations may become more pronounced and diverse, allowing it to adapt to various environments and overcome challenges in its pursuit of sustenance and growth. However, this transformation comes at a cost. The spirit's insatiable hunger and predatory nature can drive it to become ruthless and merciless, prioritizing its own survival above all else. Its actions may become increasingly monstrous and aberrant, as its once humanoid form is twisted and distorted by the relentless pursuit of power. It may lose touch with its former self, becoming a creature consumed by its hunger and desire for dominance. A group of temple guards are quickly slaughtered by one of the newly released revenants. The monstrous creature, born from the insatiable hunger of a predatory spirit, appears as a grotesque amalgamation of a dog and an ape, but with a horrifying twist. Its body is covered in coarse, matted fur that ranges in color from sickly gray to mottled brown, giving it a feral and unkempt appearance. Its limbs are powerful and muscular, allowing it to move with remarkable agility and speed. The creature's head resembles that of an ape, the broad snout, a wide mouth filled with sharp, yellowed teeth, and small, beady eyes that glimmer with an unnatural hunger. The most disturbing feature of the creature's head is this long, sinuous tail that extends from the back of its head, ending in a second tooth-filled mouth that moves independently, snapping and gnashing at the air with its razor-sharp teeth. The creature's tail mouth is a nightmarish appendage that's controlled by the creature's predatory instincts, seeking out prey on its own accord. It lashes out at villagers with a mind of its own, biting and tearing at anything that comes within its reach. Its insatiable appetite drives it to constantly seek out new victims, devouring them with both its main mouth and its tail mouth, feeding its hunger and growing stronger with each kill. The creature's body is a twisted combination of canine and simian features. It has the hulking form of an ape, but with the agility and speed of a dog. Its limbs are elongated and powerful, allowing it to leap and pounce on its prey with ferocious precision. Its claws are sharp and formidable, allowing it to rend flesh and tear through its victims with brutal efficiency. As the creature devours more spirits and consumes other creatures, it mutates and evolves, incorporating new features into its monstrous form. It develops additional appendages, such as tentacles and spikes, and gains new abilities, such as enhanced senses and regenerative capability. Its ever-evolving form makes it a formidable and unpredictable opponent, capable of adapting to different situations and overcoming challenges in its relentless pursuit of prey. The predatory ape-dog creature emerges from the shadows with a blood-curdling snarl. Its feral eyes glimmer with an unholy hunger as it spots a group of unsuspecting villagers going about their daily routines. With lightning speed, the creature lunges forward, covering the distance in mere moments, with its powerful limbs propelling it forward. Its main mouth opens wide, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth as it snaps at the nearest villager, biting down with brutal force. The villager lets out a scream of agony as the creature's teeth tear through flesh and bone, leaving a trail of gore in its wake. At the same time, the creature's tail mouth lashes out, striking another villager with lightning-fast precision. The tail mouth clamps down on the villager's arm, its teeth sinking deep into the flesh, causing searing pain and drawing fresh blood. The villager cries out in shock and horror, trying to pry the tail mouth off. but it continues to snap and gnash, relentless in its assault. The creature moves with unnatural speed and agility, leaping and pouncing on its prey with calculated precision. Its powerful claws rend through clothing and flesh, tearing into its victims with brutal efficiency. The villagers scramble to defend themselves, but the creature is relentless, fueled by its insatiable hunger and the predatory instincts of the spirits that inhabit it. The creature's mutated form gives it an advantage in battle as it employs additional appendages and abilities gained from the creatures it has devoured. It lashes out with tentacles, slashing with spiked limbs, and regenerates from any wounds. The once peaceful village is thrown into chaos as the creature rampages through its streets, devouring spirits and other creatures alike, growing stronger with each kill. The air is filled with the screams of the villagers as they desperately try to fend off the relentless assault of the predatory creature, but its hunger knows no bounds, and it continues to strike with deadly precision, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Another revenant appears nearby the main bazaar, tearing through merchants and villagers with unnaturally large claws and a bear-like body with a reptilian head. This creature has the massive body of a bear, covered in thick matted fur that ripples with each powerful movement. Its broad shoulders and muscular limbs are built for brute strength, and it moves with a heavy, lumbering gait. However, it's the creature's reptilian head that sets it apart. The head is long and triangular, resembling that of a fearsome serpent. Its eyes are slitted and glimmer with an eerie, otherworldly light. Its forked tongue flicks out, tasting the air as it searches for its next victim. The creature charges towards a group of villagers who are caught off guard by its sudden appearance. Its jaws snap open, revealing rows of sharp dagger-like teeth as it lunges forward, aiming to tear into the closest villager with its bite. The villagers scream and scatter, but the creature is fast and determined. Its powerful forelimbs swipe at the villagers, swatting them aside like rag dolls with brutal force. Its bear-like body crashes through structures, sending debris flying in all directions. The creature's reptilian head strikes with lightning speed, its jaws clamping down on a villager's arm and leg, rending flesh and bone with its powerful bite. Its long, sinuous neck allows it to strike from unexpected angles, catching villagers off guard and inflicting devastating wounds. Despite its size and lumbering appearance, the creature moves with surprising agility, dodging projectiles and shrugging off blows from makeshift weapons. Its thick fur provides some measure of protection against attacks, making it a formidable opponent to face in battle. The villagers fight back with desperation, using fire and blades and whatever makeshift weapons they can find to fend off the monstrous creatures. But its reptilian head and bear-like body are relentless, shrugging off wounds and pressing the attack with single-minded determination. The creature's mutated form, combining the raw power of a bear with the lethal instincts of a reptilian predator, makes it too formidable. Its relentless assault on the villagers leaves destruction and carnage, as it continues to pursue its insatiable hunger for fresh prey, striking fear into the hearts of those who dare stand in its way. As the Lovecraftian undead monsters descend upon the ancient city in the Middle East, chaos erupts in the streets. The monstrous creatures move with unnatural speed and ferocity, their grotesque forms striking terror into the hearts of the city's inhabitants. More and more revenants and other undead creatures begin to swarm the city from the darkness. A thick, viscous malice seeps out from the earth and corrupts all it touches. The bodies of the dead felled by the murderous revenants are raised as undead auric creatures immediately upon contact with the malice. Many of the bodies twist together and merge into a horrific gashadakuro, with dozens of arms reaching out to grasp other terrified villagers and pull them into its mass and their own ends. Panic spreads as the people desperately try to defend themselves, but the creature's otherworldly forms and unholy powers make them too much to overcome. The streets run with blood. The once thriving city is plunged into darkness and horror as the monstrous amalgamations of animals continue their onslaught, spreading fear and devastation throughout the city. Dwarka has come to an end, Enkidu whispers. The Creator has passed his judgment on this city. The forces of the underworld have been unleashed upon us all. The priest of Tultar is seized by a revenant by the shoulders, As the man screams, the creature bites down on his head, shearing his skull clean off. Haida pulls at Enkidu's arm. "We need to leave before we too are caught up in this madness." Enkidu nods and they head for the exit, but are blocked by Dakin's personal guards. The head priest has regained his composure and works to defend his faith against the heretics. "You will pay for the evil you have brought upon us," Dakin shouts. "What you see around you is only payment for your city's crimes. God has lost his patience with Dwarka's sin," Enkidu replies. "Your God has no power over us here. In Dwarka, Nyarlathotep is the supreme power." A revenant resembling a large frog mixed with a spider appears behind the men. Enkidu backs away slowly, sensing the creature's malicious intent. "You have nowhere to go," Dakin says. Suddenly, the screams of his guards ring out loudly. Dakin turns to see the revenant twisting the head off a man and drinking the blood from his neck. The head priest turns to run, but the creature pounces on his back, tearing into his flesh with abandon. The revenant straightens, looking towards the only two remaining humans still standing. Blood drips from the creature's jaws. As Enkidu raises Tiavon, two ghostly figures appear before him as a shield. "Go!" the spirit of Psalm Hyalora says as he blocks the revenant's claws with his own phantom sword. Enkidu recognizes the blade as the very same one he now holds. "We will clear you a path out of the temple." "Father?" Enkidu whispers, confused. Haida's eyes widen with shock. "Did you just call that apparition your father?" Enkidu nods. "And his apprentice, Alakam. They were killed by the priests of Dwarka for preaching against the evils of Diamanaga and Nyarlathotep worship." Psalm slashes through the neck of the nearest revenant, but three more rise up from the shadows. "There is no stopping this. Dwarka's judgment has been issued." "Will anyone be spared?" Enkidu asks, fearful for the fates of Tarvin and Lianlim. "No citizen in Dwarka shall escape this wrath. The sins of this city can only be cleansed by fire." Psalm dodges a claw swipe from a revenant and plunges his ghostly version of Tiavon through the creature's forehead. "Your time is running out. You must leave this place now." The ground beneath them splits, and geyses of flame spew upwards. Enkidu falls back, pulling Haida with him as they narrowly avoid being burned to death. "It is too late," Psalm whispers. "The executioner has already begun to awaken." "What do you mean?" Enkidu asks, shielding his face from the heat of the flames. "It stirs," Psalm says, his image beginning to fade already. "I'm sorry, son, but I do not have the power in this form to cease the horrors that will soon be unleashed." Nyarlathotep strikes, darting between two revenants, and attempting to devour Enkidu and Haida in a single bite. Psalm intercepts, holding the serpent's jaws at bay. "You are correct," the serpent hisses, straining against the spirit. "I will soon unleash all sorts of terror on humanity for the transgressions committed by you." Psalm pushes the serpent back and swings quickly, attempting to take its head. Nyarlathotep recoils, taking a grazing cut that splashes blood onto the floor. "You are not the horror of which I speak, worm. You will be dead long before the executioner begins his work." "I am the only horror you need concern yourselves with," Nyarlathotep shouts, striking again. This time Enkidu moves in and meets the serpent's fangs with his own Yazatan blade. "Take the girl and flee," Psalm shouts. "You have served our god well, and I am proud of you. There is nothing more that you can do in this place. Do not let Dwarka be your grave, as it was ours." "I am not going to die here," Enkidu shouts, slicing through several of Nyarlathotep's fangs and cutting into the serpent's jaw. "I am going to end this nightmare once and for all." Nyarlathotep howls in pain, thrashing wildly and catching Enkidu in the chest with its tail. The blow connects hard, sending the man crashing into a stone pillar. I am going to slowly digest you while you are still alive, the serpent hisses. No human can ever hope to defeat a god such as I. Aklim attempts to stab the creature from behind, but is slapped away by Nyarlathotep's thick tail. His soul becomes too weakened to remain in the mortal plane and begins to disappear. Som parries several of the serpent's bites, but he too is fading from the world. Enkidu stands, holding his chest, and moves to the side of his father's spirit. Blood runs from the corners of the man's mouth, and he winces in pain with each breath. You have wrecked my favorite city, Nyarlathotep growls. I carefully cultivated Dwarka for generations to get to this point. Because of you, I must start over elsewhere. No, Enkidu coughs. He tries to ignore the pain of his numerous injuries and remains steadfast in his determination to see this battle to its conclusion. You will die with this city you cherish so. The serpent laughs. Killed by you? I have devoured 100 warrior priests before you, and will continue to do so to 1,000 more. Nyarlathotep rises up, towering over the man by a good 10 feet, with at least another 60 feet of its length still on the floor. In all, the creature spans over some 70 feet in length. Only a small fraction of its full body was even glimpsed by its own priests. Long ago, men took dried blood from the arm of the first Grigori Sane and wetted it with the tears of devotion. Praying to the rebel Yazata, they wished for power and glory. Their prayers resonated with Sane's blood, and a small creature began to writhe in the fluid like a tiny red worm. For thousands of years, men devoted themselves to the serpent, causing it to grow larger and more powerful. The creature thirsted for human sacrifices. With Dwarka as its feeding ground, Nyarlathotep was able to gorge itself on human flesh and zealous devotion. The serpent laments all that it has lost. No one will be left alive that worships me. Do you understand how terrible that is? I will starve for generations until I am able to rebuild my priesthood. Enkidu slashes at the serpent's belly, but it avoids the strike with an undulation. Your memory will be buried in the ruins of this city. A scream catches Enkidu's attention, and he glances behind to see that Haida has become surrounded by 2 humanoid revenants. Oh, Nyarlathotep begins to smile. Does that female mean something to you? Will watching her die bring you suffering? Enkidu moves towards Haida, but is blocked by the serpent's thick black coils. He tries to cut through the beast's hide, but is barely able to scratch the armor-like scales. Som's ghostly blade mirrors Enkidu's, cutting into the same places and deepening each wound. Nyarlathotep howls in pain and backs off. Enkidu rushes, slashing through the revenants with a flurry of fast attacks. It matters not, the serpent growls. I shall just devour her myself. Swallowing her whole should prolong her agony more than being torn apart by those foul spirit beasts. Nyarlathotep lunges towards him once more, but Som plunges his ghostly blade into the serpent's tail, causing it to stop. Go! Som screams. Do not die here in vain. You must live, my son. Enkidu slides beneath the serpent's bulk on his knees and thrusts Tiavan upwards into the beast's underside. Black fluids spray outward, and the serpent rears back with a deafening howl of pain. Do you see your god now? Enkidu asks the remaining followers. My god does not bleed. My god does not feel pain. Look at yours, Dwarka. Nyarlathotep slithers back, putting the great column near the altar between him and Enkidu. You continue to mock me. The serpent hisses, black blood still running down its belly. The only strength that you possess comes from that Yazatan weapon. Without that, you are just an ordinary human. You are nothing special. Not many men can claim to have slain a god. I would think that makes me somewhat special, Enkidu says, approaching the serpent with heightened confidence. Do not taunt the beast. Flee now while you can, Psalm cautions. We have the upper hand against the worm. There's no way that I can leave without finishing that foul creature off, Enkidu argues. You will do nothing but die, Nyarlathotep howls. I will not be slain by a damn monkey. Haida attacks suddenly, stabbing her knife down through Nyarlathotep's tail. The beast howls in pain and quickly turns, jaws snapping open. Enkidu rushes, hacking his blade through the serpent's exposed core. Blood explodes outward, and Nyarlathotep slaps Enkidu aside with its coils. Retreating, the serpent vanishes back down into the sacrificial pit. Enkidu moves to follow, but Haida stops him. No, let it be. Your father is right. We have to escape this place, she pleads. Enkidu begrudgingly obliges and they run for the exit. Debris begins to rain down, blocking the doorway. Psalm's form begins to shine brightly, holding the falling rock at bay momentarily. Go! Psalm shouts. You must live! Enkidu nods, running past the spirit. Thank you, Father. We shall meet again one day in paradise. Outside the temple, several priests manage to grab Haida from behind and pile atop her, slamming the young woman's face to the street. Haida winces as her mouth fills with salty metallic blood. Enkidu moves to help, but one of the priests holds a knife to Haida's neck. Do not move, a priest shouts, his voice cracking with fear. We will kill her. If you harm her, I will make sure that each of you suffers before you die, Enkidu growls. Dwarka was peaceful, the priest laments. We were happy. Why have you brought this disaster upon us? Your immorality brought this judgment upon us all. You have angered God, and his wrath has been delivered to Dwarka for its destruction. The howling of Nyarlathotep below echoes throughout the temple. The beast is consumed by grief, and has lost all reason. Hearing their god in such a pathetic state, the remaining priests begin to lose their conviction and zealous posturing. Around the world, as far as Zhangshang, and even in Zenembia, volcanoes erupt, covering the surrounding areas in molten rock and filling the skies with smoke. Underwater mountains split open and release intense heat and lava into the seas, sending boiling water up to the surface. Electrical storms are born out of nowhere, assaulting the land with lightning bolts. Flocks of birds burst into flames, fish are boiled alive in the seas. Crowds of screaming people are reduced to ash by the lightning. Citizens flee the major cities by the thousands, many swallowed up by the opening earth. The clouds move through the atmosphere at unbelievable speeds, creating powerful twisters. The changes in the weather causes violent hurricanes to sprout up in the oceans. Massive beasts sleeping within the depths become restless as the water heats up, coming to the surface enraged. Any boat on the sea or ocean is dashed by the creatures of the depths and the storms. Thousands die in minutes, and conditions only worsen. Lightning flashes in constant bursts, exploding trees and igniting forest fires. Roofs are set ablaze, and even people are struck dead by the erratic onslaught of Mother Nature's fury. Panicked by the disasters occurring across the world with increased frequency, people flee in terror and trample each other underfoot to escape. More trenches tear open, swallowing homes and people by the hundreds. The boiling waters of the seas cause them to churn and form massive tidal waves that come crashing into the coasts. A port city itself, Dwarka, is devastated by the first wave to hit. The citizens that survived dwindle with each subsequent wave, carrying their bodies out to sea. What is happening? Haida asks, standing up as the priests that have been holding her down now flee in terror for the only exit not blocked by rubble. Several reach the outside of the temple complex, but are swept away in a wave of unforgiving tide. Water begins to fill the temple, making it last because of its higher elevation. Soon the waters reach their knees. Enkidu looks around as the temple continues to shake and collapse around them. A fear that Dwarka has brought about the wrath of the true god. The serpent emerges from his pit, now filled with water, hissing and foaming at the mouth. Nyarlathotep is mad with rage and hatred towards the humans. This was my celebration. I had nearly amassed the power of a god through the devotion of this city. The serpent looks out at the quickly flooding city and howls in grief. You have stripped me of everything. Deep within the earth, the final of the 8 spell circles binding the terror known as the Magog continues to rotate and vanish quickly, down to a tiny fraction of its binding power. The circle steadily leaks the dark energy trapped within. The gases inside of the clouds overhead combust, consuming the entire sky in flames. Humans sensitive to spiritual pressure and energy are filled with madness, clutching their heads and screaming in agony. Many of these sensitive people fall to the ground dead, blood oozing from their orifices. Enkidu freezes, his body seized by a cold chill that runs through his blood. Never before has the man felt such an ominous aura, and it only continues to grow. That is not the serpent, Enkidu whispers. What is this dark power rising beneath us? Nyarlathotep pauses, his tongue testing the air. He too senses the Magog's energy leaking out from weakened seals. No, the serpent hisses. It cannot be that creature. Not now. This world is doomed. He slams his tail against the wall in a fit of rage. Everything that I have worked so hard for is ruined. The final seal binding the Magog is now but a sliver, resulting in a release of energy that spawns several mile-wide hurricanes and tornadoes across the planet, radiating out from Dwarka like a dark launching station. More volcanoes join in the symphony of explosions, blocking out the sun entirely with smoke and ash. Thousands of birds choke on the ash, suffocating and plummeting to their deaths. Herds of deer and their like flee the lava flows with speed, only to be swept away in the waves of the torrential flash flooding. The seafaring peoples of Tug gather near the docks as the sky blackens, lit only by the eerie flashes of red lightning in the distance. Across the Gulf, storm clouds swirl over the city of Dwarka. Waters churn. The sea turns black. Waves carry bodies and anything loose out to the depths. When the first bloated corpse washes the shore in Tug, horrified screams ring out loudly. In a chorus of fright, the villagers look out across the sea to find that the entire surface of the water is choked with the dead. Tremors vibrate through the ground, causing any weak point in the surface to give. Numerous more volcanoes become active due to the disturbances, shooting plumes of molten rock hundreds of feet into the air. The sides of mountains blow out, consuming forests and villages in rapid flows of lava. Trees burst into flame as the amoeba-like rock swells over them. People try to flee, but without any warning, most are burned up by the molten rivers. Continental shelves depress, releasing pressure from deep-sea vents and awakening underwater volcanoes to match the bellowing of their landlocked brethren. As the vents release, the sea bubbles up into a massive rise over 100 feet in height and many miles long. The wave parts, half crashing down towards Melem and Tizkar, with another swelling towards the coast of Tug. All of the coastal villages along the Arya Sea are swallowed by this tidal waves, erasing them from existence. The people of Tug look on, knowing they cannot possibly escape the massive water wall that races towards them. In minutes, all of the coast is flooded and merged with Lake Arpa and the Peleg and Eber rivers. All the way back in Kataltakuk, the sky is blackened. The sporadic flashes of red lightning are the only illumination. The earthquakes are felt by the village, but aside from some structural damage, the city is relatively spared from the destruction suffered by the coastal areas. No volcanoes are located near Kataltakuk, and the lava flows do not sweep down over the village. Aside from the turbulent weather, one would have no idea the true extent of the horrors being experienced elsewhere in the world. What do you think is happening? Eskiel asks Tannen, walking up to the man as he stares out across the horizon. I have a terrible feeling that tragedy has befallen our Dwarka party. Enkidu can handle any ill that they encounter. I do not believe that they are in any danger. Your faith does not cancel out my fears as a father. Tarvin does not have the experience nor the instincts to survive that Enkidu possesses. Enkidu will most likely return, but my son may not. Eskiel puts a hand on Tannin's shoulder. Have faith, my friend. God will protect them. God cannot protect everyone, Tannin challenges. How many of our people were killed by the demon invaders? Where was his protection then? Lightning strikes dangerously close, catching a roof behind them on fire. As villagers rush to put out the flames, another lightning strike hits the ground nearby and knocks the men to their backs. Sparkles of charged ions snake and crackle across the earth, which begins to move as if something were burrowing underneath. Howls and screams of anguish echo through the air. Hands claw up from the ground, grasping for leverage. Rotten corpses pull themselves free from their graves, reanimated by the dark energy released in Dwarka. Belsa? A farmer whispers in horror as the corpse of his wife, killed by the Sakari, staggers towards him with outstretched arms and gaping jaws. Move away, you fool! Eskiel shouts, shoving the man aside and drawing his sword. He may be long retired from the warrior caste of the priesthood, but with Enkidu gone and Baron missing, the city is in short supply of trained protectors. There are more emerging all over, Tannin shouts, swinging a garden tool in an arc to cleave half the face from an attacking corpse. These are the victims of the demons, Eskiel says. Their desecrated bodies are being revived by the foul air. Tannin takes down another corpse, backing his way towards a building for shelter as the men become surrounded. The screams of the men who had been putting out the nearby fires are heard, revealing that not everyone is having luck fending off the monsters. Could this be some power of the demons that we were unaware? Tannin asks, swinging widely to keep the corpses at bay. Eskiel tries to pause to visualize the magical symbols for fire, but cannot concentrate, with the corpses swarming all over them. The corpses of the fallen villagers begin to rise, animated as mindless oryx by some dark and malevolent force. Their eyes glow with unholy light as they shamble towards the living, driven by an insatiable hunger for flesh. The undead villagers claw their way out of the ground, their bodies twisted and decayed. Some still wear tattered remains of their once familiar clothing, but now they are nothing more than empty shells, devoid of their former selves. Those whose bodies were burned are spared this ghastly resurrection, yet the revival is not restricted to those killed by the Sakari. The bones of the long deceased, having little to no flesh remaining on them, also rise, with the sole purpose of murder. The creatures lunge at the living with outstretched arms, their fingers curled into claws and their mouths agape in a never-ending hunger. They move with unnatural speed and strength, driven solely by the urge to feed on the living. 2 guardsmen appear, slashing a path to the shelter. What's going on here? We were on patrol when we were attacked in the forest by several villagers who looked like they were already dead, one of the guardsmen says. I believe that is exactly what happened, Eskiel says. Dark magics have tainted the rest of our brethren. How fares the rest of the city? Tannin asks. Most of the attacks we have seen have occurred outside the city walls. Only a handful have happened within homes we thought abandoned. Finishing off the remaining corpses, the guardsmen escort the survivors back through the rear gates of the city, where Eskiel is able to focus with the time needed to purify the lingering dead with Agnastra fire. You still feel that everything is going to be fine? Tannin asks angrily. I believe that the dead reviving is a clear indication that something is very wrong with the world right now. The final seal breaks and the entire binding spell fades out of existence. A last surge of energy rings out, reducing most of Dwarka's survivors to dust. As the predatory spirit creatures continue their rampage, devouring other spirits and growing stronger with each kill, the accumulated evil from these consumed spirits begins to have dire consequences on the environment, unleashing its dark power as it begins to revive. The Magog inadvertently causes a series of natural disasters and strange weather phenomena that further add to the chaos and destruction. Weather becomes erratic and unpredictable, defying natural patterns and seasons. Blistering heat waves scorch the land, with temperatures soaring to unbearable levels, causing droughts and wildfires. Biting cold snaps freeze bodies of waters and cause frostbite even in regions where such extreme weather was unheard of. Unusual and eerie phenomena occur in the skies. Strange and otherworldly lights dance across the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the land. Unexplained auras shimmer in undulating colors that are not of this world. Dark clouds take on sinister shapes resembling grotesque faces or monstrous forms, casting an oppressive shadow over the land. The evil unleashed by the Magog causes a pervasive sense of dread and unease to settle over the region. People are plagued by nightmares, and their emotions are heightened to extreme levels, leading to conflicts and unrest among the survivors. Crops wither, livestock sicken, and natural resources become scarce, further exacerbating the dire situation. As the energy of the Magog grows stronger, its influence on the environment becomes more pronounced, amplifying the natural disasters and strange weather phenomena. The land becomes a desolate wasteland, scarred by the creature's insatiable hunger for power and the dark forces it has unleashed. The surviving villagers, already struggling to fend off the monstrous creatures and the risen undead, now face the added challenges of battling against the chaotic and destructive effects of the unleashed evil upon the natural world. Enkidu, once a strong and vibrant man, now appears haggard and worn, his once muscular frame reduced to a shadow of its former self. He moves with a slow, labored gait, each step seemingly a struggle. Deep lines of exhaustion and anguish mar his weather-beaten face, his eyes dull and haunted from the constant battles against the encroaching evil. Enkidu's clothes are now tattered and stained with dirt and blood, evidence of the relentless fights he has endured. His hair, once thick and lustrous, hangs in unkempt strands, matted with sweat and grime. His skin, once bronzed from days under the sun, now appears pallid and sallow, drained of vitality. Despite his fatigue, Enkidu's determination to survive and protect remains of his homeland is evident in his eyes. His mind is a whirlwind of emotions, fear, anger, and sorrow, but he clings to a flicker of hope, a glimmer of resolve that keeps him going. He has witnessed the horrors unleashed by the predatory spirit creatures, and the resulting devastation on the land and its people, and it weighs heavily on him. Enkidu's senses are dulled from exhaustion, his reflexes slowed, but he still carries the scars of battles fought and won. His body is covered in cuts, bruises, and burns. His once powerful limbs ache with fatigue. Despite his weakened state, he carries himself with a resolute determination, driven by a fierce inner strength that refuses to yield. Enkidu's spirit is tested to the limits, but he clings to his memories of a time when the land was prosperous and peaceful, and his village was safe. He draws upon the memory of his people to find the strength to press on, to continue fighting against the evil that has befallen Dwarka. Though fatigued and barely clinging to his senses, Enkidu remains a stalwart survivor, determined to push forward and do whatever it takes to confront the darkness and restore peace and balance to the world. Enkidu finally collapses, nearly carried away by the waters. His body is less durable than his determination. Blood drips from his nose and ears, and he cannot hear any sounds, save for a low rumbling. The pressure around him is too intense, and the feeling of evil increases each second exponentially. "Enkidu, we must go!" Haida shouts with concern as the flooding has risen to their shoulders. Paralyzed by the Magog's aura, Enkidu nearly is taken by the waters as his head temporarily submerges. Haida climbs up the steps, holding onto the central column with all of her strength. "You have destroyed everything!" the serpent screams. Nyarlathotep lunges in his rage, snapping at Enkidu with its oversized jaws. Drawn out of his daze by the threat to his life, Enkidu turns and quickly plunges his sword deep into the serpent's right eye. "Damn you!" The serpent screams, undulating and slamming his body uncontrollably into the walls. Spasms of pain cause him to thrash, but the agony is not alleviated. While the serpent convulses in pain and rage, a flashing red light emanates from the pit. Inhuman howls echo out, sounding like a hellish choir. A small, black figure begins to rise from the light, shrouded by an intense energy that is suffocating in its thickness. The small, dark figure emerges from the midst of the swirling evil with a palpable aura of malevolence. Its form is shadowy, shifting and indistinct, as if composed of pure darkness itself. It exudes a sense of otherworldly power and malice that sends a shiver down Enkidu's spine. The creature's eyes, if one could call them that, glow with an unholy light pierced through the darkness. With an eerie and unnerving intensity, its voice echoes with a guttural, raspy tone that seems to reverberate with the dark energy, sending tremors through the air. As the figure approaches, Enkidu readies himself for battle despite his wariness. He can feel the oppressive weight of the creature's presence, its malevolent energy seeping into the very air around him. The darkness seems to bend and twist around the figure, as if in servitude to its will. The creature moves with an unnatural grace, its movements sinuous and fluid, as if it defies the laws of physics. Its form flickers and shifts, taking on the aspects of various menacing shapes, sharp claws, serrated teeth, and elongated limbs. Enkidu's senses are overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of the creature's dark power, and he struggles to maintain his focus. "What is that?" Haida whispers, trying to look away from the light. "You have damned this world with your meddling," Nyarlathotep screams. "Everything will be destroyed." Enkidu struggles to focus, the energy bearing down upon him like the weight of a mountain. A small, child-sized creature of a leathery tan color rises from the water behind Nyarlathotep. Pebble-like scales dot the creature's genderless flesh. Deep-set eyes of dark crimson and an enormous mouth are its only facial features. Inside of its mouth are 2 rows of needle-like teeth and a long serpentine tongue forked at the end. 2 hollow pits lie in the place of ears, and it has no nose or body hair. Nyarlathotep turns towards the creature, but with an incredible speed it appears behind him in an instant. With one swipe of its claws, the small creature cuts through the serpent's head and severs it from the rest of its body. Thrashing wildly, the body of Dwarka's false god whips about in its dying throes, but the Magog pays it no mind. Several priests on the steps tremble in fear. The Magog turns its head to look at them, grinning as it smells their fear with its tongue. Tasting their emotions, the creature leaps at them, and in seconds the men are butchered, with such brutality that nothing remains of them except for small chunks of meat and much blood. "What are you?" Enkidu asks, balling his fists and preparing for an inevitable fight. Based on the creature's speed and the ease to which it was able to kill Nyarlathotep, Enkidu knows that he cannot easily win. "I do not know from where you came, beast," he says, drawing his sword. "I shall send you back there straight away." The Magog is not amused, merely staring at the man and blinking several times. Enkidu charges forward, running at the creature and slashing horizontally. With just a backhand, the Magog catches Enkidu across the face and sends him crashing through the ruins of a stone building. Moaning, Enkidu crawls to his feet. The pain that he feels is unlike anything he has ever before experienced. "What strength!" Enkidu coughs, spitting up a mouthful of blood into the near waist-high water. He attacks again, leaping out of the surf, but is again swatted away easily. The blow knocks out 2 of Enkidu's teeth, and he collapses into the water. The creature lunges at Enkidu with inhuman speed, its movements a blur of darkness. Enkidu fights back with all of his might, summoning every ounce of strength and skill he has left. The clash between the 2 forces is fierce and intense, the air crackling with dark energy and sparks of light as they collide. Enkidu's fatigue weighs heavily on him, but he fights on, driven by his determination to protect his homeland and defeat the malevolent creature. The battle rages on, with Enkidu dodging and parrying the creature's relentless attacks, while striking back with all of his might. He can feel his wounds reopening and his strength waning, but he refuses to yield. No matter how hard he fights, none of his attacks can penetrate the Magog's hide. He is pushed far past his limits, and he knows that if he is not able to end the battle soon, he will die from exhaustion alone. Enkidu's wary body can no longer keep up with the relentless assault of the malevolent creature. Despite his valiant efforts, he is eventually overwhelmed by the creature's dark power. The creature's last strike sends Enkidu hurling into the water with a resounding splash. Enkidu struggles to resurface. His battered body and depleted strength betray him. He sinks deeper into the dark waters, his vision blurring, and his breath becoming labored. His mind is foggy, and his body feels heavy as he succumbs to the exhaustion. As Enkidu sinks further into the depths, he catches glimpses of the creature's dark form disappearing into the shadows, its malevolent laughter echoing in his ears. He knows that he has been defeated, at least for now. Enkidu's body comes to rest at the bottom of the water, his senses dulled and his consciousness slipping away. His last thoughts are of his homeland and his people, and the resolve to continue his fight against the evil that threatens them, even as the darkness envelops him. The waters close over Enkidu, leaving no trace of his presence on the surface. The world above continues to be plagued by the malevolent creature's dark influence, while Enkidu's fate remains unknown. "Enkidu!" Haida shouts, watching him fail to resurface. The Magog looks over at Haida, its attention drawn by the second voice. Grinning, the creature transforms an arm into a sharp blade. Enkidu rises up from the water, driving Tiavan up through the Magog's ribs. Though the attack would have killed a mortal being, the Magog has no vital organs and feels no pain. The wound shifts, healing closed as it pushes the sword to the side. Enkidu tries to counter, but the Magog grabs him by the throat. The creature lifts Enkidu, studying him. Enkidu cannot feel any breath, suggesting the being does not require oxygen to survive. Driving a knee in the Magog's chest, Enkidu breaks free and falls back into the water with a loud splash. The Magog stabs its transformed arm down several times, attempting to spear the man. Enkidu rises from the side, hammering the Magog with dozens of fast punches. None of the blows seem to have any effect on the creature. Rather than dodge, the Magog absorbs the hits with the indifference of a bored sloth. As Enkidu attempts a roundhouse kick, the Magog suddenly moves, thrusting a transformed arm towards his gut. Twisting to the side, Enkidu catches a glancing wound, but it's still enough to cause him to lose a great deal of blood. Swinging at the Magog's throat, Enkidu manages to slash through the creature's jugular, but much to his horror, no blood appears. The Magog looks at him and grins, saliva dripping from its large jaws. Without warning, the Magog moves towards Enkidu with a speed that he is unable to detect. Eyes wide with shock, the man looks down to see a single, extended finger buried to the knuckle in his chest. The Magog continues to grin, relishing in Enkidu's suffering. "Enkidu!" Haida screams, pulling herself up to the roof of the temple as it becomes the last dry section she can reach after becoming separated by the widening gulf of floodwaters. The Magog turns to look at the girl, drawn to her anguish. Enkidu regains his senses and lashes out with his sword, managing to cut the creature in two. The portions of the Magog collapse into the water, and Enkidu holds a hand firmly against his chest to slow the bleeding. His face becomes pale and he struggles to remain conscious. "Can you reach me?" Enkidu coughs, blood drooling from the corners of his mouth. Haida shakes her head, almost catatonic with fear. "Then I will come to you. Do not move." With a great splash, the Magog rises from the water fully healed. The creature is angry, and a flickering red aura flashes around its body. The Magog parts its lips and utters a piercing shriek. The sound of crashing water in the distance draws the Magog's attention. A massive tidal wave created by the tremors generated by the Magog's release sweeps over the land towards the ruins of Dwarka. Once the wave hits, the area that was once a booming port will become nearly 100 feet below sea level and connected to the vast waters of the Jiangshang. The remainder of the temple collapses atop them, and the humans are swept away with the rushing waters. Rising from the debris surrounded by the pulsating red glow, the Magog stands on the surface of the water without breaking it, as if it were solid ground. Most of Dwarka is now underwater. Debris and bodies float on the water's surface. Lightning continues to strike all around, and the tremors below continue to rumble. A protective light envelops Enkidu and Haida. Enkidu looks up to see the goddess Eris hovering over the sea beside them. "I am relieved that you survived, Enkidu," Eris says. "There are very few that can say they share your luck." What is that thing?" Enkidu asks, still weak. "I could do nothing to stop it." Eris shakes her head. "Whatever it is, I am not privy. I can sense nothing but malice from it, not even life energy. It is more magic than a mortal being." "Can you defeat it?" Haida asks, assuming that Eris is stronger than any human, being a goddess and all. Eris smiles. "Where did you find this one? She is cute." Enkidu does not respond, still dealing with the pain of his defeat. "Child, I am not a fighter. I would stand no better chance against the creature than a human warrior. I suggest you count yourselves blessed for surviving, and find somewhere to hide." "I do not think we can hide from that thing," Enkidu says. "The entire world is in danger." "Do not waste this opportunity, Enkidu," Eris says in stern warning. "I will never forgive you if you die." "Opportunity? You're not planning on facing it, are you?" "No, stay away from it. You will not survive." "Your concern is touching. It validates my own feelings. I have lived a very long life and caused much chaos. Meeting you changed me, somewhat. I actually grew to regret some of my selfish past actions. This will be my way of thanking you." Eris takes a deep breath and blows outward, propelling Enkidu and Haida far away from the ruins of Dwarka. The Magog scans the ruins, trying to find any survivors to kill. The sea has swallowed most of the city and drowned all who were fortunate enough to escape the creature's initial release. Eris appears in front of the Magog, causing it to look at the goddess with intrigue. "Do you know what I am?" The Magog cocks its head, trying to understand. "I suppose not." She holds her hands out, creating the illusions of dozens of Dwarken citizens, trying to swim away from the city. The Magog immediately fires blasts of energy through the illusions, annoyed that they will not die. "You can tell the difference between what is real and what is illusion, can't you? You truly are the enemy of mortal life." The Magog growls, turning back towards the goddess. "I would never dare to call myself a champion of humanity, but without them I would have no purpose," Eris says. "We gods continue to exist because of the beliefs of mortals. We are deeply linked together." The Magog roars loudly, throwing its hands to consume Eris in a bright red energy. The goddess tries to block with a magical barrier of her own, but the Magog is too powerful, and she is forced back. Cracks run through the length of her barrier, and energy splinters off in pieces. What was I thinking? I'm not brave. Why did I even try to fight this monster? Eris thinks of Enkidu and laughs. Stupid man. This is all your fault. The Magog's energy breaks through Eris's barrier and consumes her. The goddess does not scream, merely continuing to smile in defiance as her form vanishes within the red light. Do not let me down, Eris thinks. You have to live, Enkidu. Only you can save the humans. I know that you can do it. The annoyance gone, the Magog returns to searching for any human survivors. All mortal life must be extinguished. That is its only concern. The evil of humanity birthed the Magog, and their sins as its fuel source. As long as man exists, the Magog will continue to grow stronger and destroy the world. There is no reasoning with the creature. It has no higher thoughts or function. The Magog has an instinctual drive that controls its every action. It is more like an organic automaton than a living creature. It must seek out and destroy all life, because that is what it was created to do. Enkidu emerges from the water coughing for air. He uses one arm to anchor himself and the other to pull Haida over him and onto dry land. Carried several miles away from the city, Enkidu is lucky to have survived. The thousands of citizens of Dwarka and their neighboring lands were not so fortunate. Haida is not moving, and Enkidu realizes that she has taken in too much water. Quickly tilting her head back and compressing her chest several times, Enkidu forces air into Haida, and she spits up the death-filled water. Far behind the pair, the tallest monument to the god of Dwarka topples into the waves, and finally no trace of the city remains visible to the eye. Enkidu can still feel the intense spiritual pressure of the Magog, even at such a distance. The sky is completely black, the sun blocked out by tons of smoke and ash. The wilderness of Ramash. Refugio tries to calm his horses as they rise up in fright. The sky is filled with burning clouds and violent lightning storms. "Is this normal for your world?" Shayatina asks. "Not at all," Refugio whispers. "I have never seen anything like this before." "The very ground beneath our feet trembles." "Those are just earthquakes, but I do not understand what has caused them," Refugio explains. "They are usually preceded by some kind of smaller rumbling as a warning." The mage curses that he was forced to flee in haste and leave behind his scientific instruments. Surely he believes he could have predicted this occurrence if he had access to his study. And what of the strange sky? Overhead the clouds swirl together with unnatural movement. The sun is completely gone, yet everything is illuminated by a red glow. "I do not have any explanation for that," Refugio admits. "It is troubling indeed." Around them, the skeletal remains of past travelers, ambushed and killed by raiders, begin to emerge from the dirt, moaning and growling with anger and hatred. The eyes of the undead glow with an evil malice. Shayatina acts quickly, slashing through the undead with her claws. The severed pieces of the creatures continue moving, even after being cut away from their bodies. "This is some dark sorcery," the Sakari growls, leaping back as the undead continue forward undeterred. The soldiers become uneasy, and Refugio must speak with them in order to reassure them of their safety. "We will continue to Ramash and inquire there of this foul weather. Do not despair. Whatever the cause of the imbalance in this world, we shall overcome it." "What if the dead have risen everywhere?" a soldier asks. Refugio does not have an answer. They do not have the luxury of time to contemplate, as Shayatina urges them to move quickly. The undead are slow but relentless. On horseback, they should be able to put some distance between them, but the soldier's question lingers in the back of Refugio's mind. What if this is the end of the world? The mage wonders. The wilderness of Tug. Stalking a large pig-sized rodent through the bush, Lanlam runs swiftly and silently. A crude bow constructed of animal bone and sinew is slung over her tan shoulders. A skirt of rabbit fur covers her waist, and a pack of wood and bone arrows bounce around as she runs. Cornering the animal in a ditch, she approaches for the kill when the world suddenly shakes violently. Trees are uprooted, and she is forced to dive to the side as a fissure snakes open beneath her feet and swallows her prey into darkness. Lanlam looks up at the sky, staring at the swirling storm clouds in confusion. The temperature goes from freezing cold to oppressively hot in seconds, before reversing twice more. Lightning flashes all around without purpose, indiscriminately burning whatever it touches. The nearest city of Muria is thrust into panic as lightning attacks its buildings relentlessly. Massive flooding swells the Arya Sea and drowns the coastal cities in minutes. No one can move quickly enough to escape the deluge. Dwarka, Tug, Ubaid, Tizkar, Melim, and dozens more are swallowed by 100-foot-high walls of water. Lanlam can hear the roar of the flood waters barreling through the countryside, and scrambles to get up to higher ground. The world has become chaos, and no one is safe. Every disaster imaginable occurs, and the death toll exceeds anything mankind has ever seen. Standing atop a grouping of foothills northeast of Muria, Lanlum looks down on the once green lands. Now, all she can see is blackened water as the Aria has merged with Lake Arpa and the Eber and Peleg rivers to form a massive super sea. Little does she know the devastation is so great that the Jiangxi to the north has also merged into the Aria, consuming the entire Jiangshang Peninsula and drowning millions. The young woman wonders what fate has befallen Tannen and Enkidu, and if they too were lost in the disasters. She fears that Kataltakuk now too lies at the bottom of a corpse-choked sea and shudders. They survived the Sakari only to be destroyed by the very wrath of God. Had she not been tricked by Maon and left to die alone in the wilderness, she too would have been caught in the flooding unaware and drowned. She thinks with sadness that somewhere in those black waters lies all of the supplies meant to restore Kataltakuk, and the body of the treacherous Dworkin temptress Maon. Lanlum spits, purging the woman from her memory. I have survived the Sakari, and I have survived the horrors of Dwarka. I shall survive this too. She steels herself, ready to face whatever challenge lies ahead. The Sea of Dwarka, ruins of the port city. Dwarka is gone. No buildings remain above the surface of the sea. Amongst the debris of homes and temples, bodies choke the waterways. The seas have calmed, and as the temperature of the water returns to normal, the massive storms lose power and slowly break apart. Are you all right? Enkidu asks as Haida sits up. Her normally bronze skin is now pale, and her black hair hangs down in wet strands. What happened? She asks, each breath interrupted by coughing. Enkidu shakes his head. Despite all he can sense, he still has no idea what the creature is or what its motives could be. All he can tell so far is that it makes no distinction between good or evil, cutting down Nyarlathotep and its priests without remorse. Enkidu winces, touching his tender chest. The small hole has stopped bleeding, filled with seawater and grime. Whatever that beast is, it is pure evil. I've never before felt a being filled with such darkness, Enkidu says. You cut it in half and it healed. How is that even possible? I do not know. No creature should possess regenerative abilities that powerful. Not even the Yazata can repair damage that extensive to their bodies. Could the priests have used magic to conjure that monster? It is possible, but they seemed as confused as us about the creature. I do not think that that beast had anything to do with the serpent or its priests. The Magog floats above the ruins of Dwarka, eyes darting across the debris. Finding a group of survivors clinging to a floating roof, the creature shrieks and lowers a hand down towards them. In an instant, the survivors are atomized by a pulse of red energy. It is just toying with us, hunting the survivors down for sport, Haida whispers, shutting her eyes tightly. It intends to kill everyone. Enkidu tries to stand, but finds it difficult. If that is the case, we must make haste to find refuge. Refuge? Where could we find refuge from something like that? It just destroyed all of Dwarka by itself. Nowhere could be safe from that creature. The Magog releases another pulse of energy into the water, causing a large explosion. In his heart, Enkidu knows that to mean the creature has killed more survivors. She is right. There is nowhere for us to hide from a force of evil such as this. The entire world is doomed. The Anshar realm, world of Halaban. The Hashmalim Yazata, named Hoyles, tears his clothing and drops to his knees in mourning for mankind. Able to see the events transpiring on the earth, the Yazata is consumed with grief after witnessing so many lives suddenly extinguished. The volcanoes burn through forests and villages. Floodwaters sweep over entire cities and drown their entire populations. Earthquakes open up trenches leading into blackness that swallows homes. Dark energy strikes out randomly, raising the dead and tearing through the fabric of dimensions to bring into the human world all manner of terrible creatures like revenants and blasphemes, malevolent energy condensed into undead remains and reanimated into large monstrosities. "Master, what is wrong?" asks a young human warrior named Adonai, who pauses in his sword training to inquire of his suddenly emotional teacher. Like Enkidu, Adonai was chosen by Hoyles as a student. Because of his natural talents and great potential, only 14 years old, Adonai is still early in his training, has only just begun to discover his ability. "Oh, poor child," Hoyles weeps. "Humanity is in grave peril. I am afraid that soon you may be the only one left of your kind." Adonai stabs his blade into the grass and wipes his forehead with a rag. "What peril do you speak of? Have the Sicarii returned?" Hoyles shakes his head. "No, not the Sicarii. Something far older and far more terrible has awoken. No united front of warriors and magicians from around the world will be able to defeat the Magog." "The Magog? A singular being more dangerous than a whole army of Sicarii?" Adonai cannot believe that anyone could be stronger than an entire army. "The Sicarii are mortal beings like you humans, albeit naturally stronger. The Magog is a primal force that has existed since the very dawn of creation. Like death itself, the Magog is more of a cosmic truth than an actual tangible being. No amount of men will be able to stop the Magog." "A cosmic force? You mean this terrible thing was intentionally designed by God?" Hoyles nods. "The essence of evil is inescapable. Since the creation of this universe, all mortal beings have proven that they are incapable of total purity. Even with guidance, mortals fail constantly. The most righteous man will still sin. Because of this truth, the Creator was deeply troubled. The spirit of evil was preventing him from a complete relationship with his creation. To remedy this and allow mortals to become worthy of his presence, God designed a vessel that would contain the sins of mankind and purify their souls for a short time." "Why has this force been released? Is there someone out there with the power to control its force?" "As I said, the sins of man could only be pardoned for a short time. Mortals would quickly return to their sinful ways, ever adding to the evil of the Magog vessel. It was not supposed to awaken this early. Not again," Hoyles mutters. "Not after the destruction it caused the last time. No, the sins of Dwarka were just too terrible and widespread. The Magog could not contain all of their evil." "Please, Master, tell me what is happening. Is my family in danger?" Adonai asks. He left his small village of Eglon, hundreds of miles west of Levant, in the land of Ninimbia, 2 years ago to begin his training. "Your village is safe for now," Hoyle says, causing Adonai to tense and draw his sword back up from the ground. "But it will not remain so for long. All of mankind is in danger while the Magog is loosed. The Magog exists only to destroy, and it will not stop until every mortal is erased from your world."